There's also a lot of nonsense, of course, on the internet too, which can take you down conspiracy paths. I hate the term conspiracy because the government wants us to use it like we're some sort of hobbyists and some sort of kooks. I don't use the term. But that's become the most popular type of site now, is conspiracy site. And there's many out there. There's professional agents out there as well who've been funded by governments and even launched by governments, to be well known, especially in Europe, to lead the conspiracy sites. Then they bring in the UFOs, the aliens, until you have achieved your goal. Counterintelligence. Let's talk about counterintelligence and how it works. What is intelligence? Intelligence gathering is sending agents out to simply listen. To listen in marketplaces, bars, cafes, as to what the people are discussing. Lawrence of Arabia, in his own book, 7 Pillars of Wisdom, was trained as an agent. He was trained in Arabic languages. He was given lots of money, he and 11 other people, trained from Cambridge, and sent over to the Arabic countries to start up Arabic newspapers. Once they started putting stories in the newspapers, they went round the marketplaces, they hired lots of guys to listen to gossip, to see if the intelligence they were putting out in the papers was being discussed by the recipients, the readers. That's basic intelligence gathering. What is counterintelligence? Counterintelligence, from a government's perspective, is taking information and data that could be crucially, it could be bad for the ruling regime, and finding ways to counter that knowledge, counter it. What you do, standard-wise, if you can't defame the person who's bringing out a truth or kill them, is to bring out your own heroes. Launch them well, finance them well into the same area, saying the same stuff that others are talking about. It's called intelligence, giving out facts. And once they have the following, then they start bringing in aliens and UFOs, and they bring in the New Age, the whole New Age religion into it. Spirituality is the big term they're using today. Until a newcomer, a skeptic, will hear this stuff from the paid agent, who's very good, who says gives the same data as the person who doesn't go into the UFOs and so on. But the guy who doesn't go into the UFOs, aliens, reptilians, and all the rest of it, suddenly is thrown out with the other guy. You're classified with them by association. Your topics are associated. Even though you stay clear of the fantasy stuff, the disinformation, you'll be lumped along with them. And then you've countered the intelligence. When you mention the facts, people laugh at you, say, oh, you probably believe that the aliens are running the world now. And that's it. That's counterintelligence. And that is also all over the internet. And it's paid for by, again, government PSYOPs operations. How many people know that all government agencies or departments, all governments in the world, basically, have departments of culture which hire cartoonists and pay their expenses to do cartoons, always incorporating the latest political correct story to do with environment, waste, bad adults, and how they've destroyed the planet through their consuming, etc. How many people realize, as you plonk your children down in front of it to babysit them, that they're actually being brainwashed scientifically? And these cartoons were designed by experts to get their message across to those children, implanted in their young minds, fixed in their young minds forever, for the rest of their lives, ongoing daily, and even right down to the novels that you read to children that are designed for children too, which will incorporate all of this, all paid by government grants to authors and writers. You literally have to take it into your own hands. It's one of the most dangerous tools that can be used. It's also dangerous in this extent that why do you think government licenses TV stations? If you were an independent producer, TV station who came out with this kind of information, you would not get a license. You'd have to be authorized and politically correct with a whole bunch of things to do and not to do written out before you'd be given a license. And you'd be checked on every so often to make sure you were following those topics that you're allowed to. If you want to advise people on television, and you can do this with yourself, how to train yourself, how to watch television. If you never get involved, you understand a storyline, you watch a movie, but don't get involved in, as I say, there's always a thread or a hook for you to follow, a plot, whatever, the chase. The guy always ends up with the beautiful woman at the end after going through hell to rescue a child or whatever it happens to be or save the world. If you can stop yourself from getting lost in the emotional part of it and study the movie as you're watching it, you'll learn the techniques that have been implanted in the movie itself. That's a great way to learn. If you can do it with yourself, you can also show other people how to do this, to actually study everything as it's been presented to you. And eventually what you'll find is that when you're watching even documentaries, you'll see how the documentaries themselves are shaped to give you the opinions, often very strong opinions, without giving you specific facts or giving you distorted facts, etc. Learn how to critically analyze and think as you're watching. And if you can show others this technique, a good example is sit down with someone who regularly watches a good movie, one that you've previously watched, and then point out all the politically correct little inserted words, slogans, phrases that have been put in there, and show them how it's been done. That way it can actually be fun to study television and write down all the different things that they've missed, but it's all implanted subconsciously in their mind, because those implants, those subconscious implants, will become their opinions, and they will never know how they arrived at them. They won't remember it's from this particular documentary, this particular movie, or whatever. So that can also be fun. That's a positive side of it. You can train anyone to do this. With the internet, the first person to mention it that I know of, at least to the public, was again this master, Brzezinski, in his book Between Two Ages. In the early 70s, he said, shortly a system will be given to the public of mass communication, which will cause a revolution, the revolutionary thing to change society. But he also mentioned and hinted at the fact that there would be regulation behind it. He mentioned too that those who brought it in would never lose control, the main control over the internet, because after all, knowledge is power. Knowledge has always been power. That's why, all down through the ages, the real machinations of government are never told to the public. Real power comes from understanding and having all the facts on any particular topic. So therefore, the internet was to be given to the general public with other intentions. Initially, it was to get them all into it. Now, what did the elite want to achieve? What was their point of view? They wanted people to become so used to the internet they couldn't do without it. Now we see businesses really can't do without it. They can't imagine going back to pencil and paper and taking inventory and all this kind of stuff. For the youngsters, who must be the generation they target, they made sure that that's the only thing I knew about the internet from the media. I was completely ignorant about it, and computers. The only thing I knew was there was lots of pornography on it. Every paper kept telling you about it, which again is the same old technique they used in the 60s and 70s. Aren't we naughty? Wink, wink, for the rock stars on television. Knowing all the youngsters would get into it when their hormones are high. That's all they're thinking about. But once folk were addicted to it, they also planned to gradually alter it, keeping the people addicted to it as they changed it into another system where mainstream media, the authorized media, the culture creation industry media, would eventually have prime, or the main dibs, the first grabs at the main bandwidth that eventually they're claiming will have to be reduced. So in the meantime, there's never been a window of opportunity for the general public to use a medium to communicate to each other alternate news, verified facts, to each other as we have at the moment, that eventually, supposedly, is going to be policed. They've had international meetings, the first one held in Canada, under the guise of the United Nations, or the auspices of the United Nations, to do with regulating and censorship of the internet. They have these meetings every year as they add more laws to it. We know the cloud system is to come in eventually. It's been all over the media in Britain, where you won't be able to store anything on a hard drive. You won't even need a hard drive eventually. Remote servers will have all your information for you. It will then be used as a form of punishment if you were politically incorrect in some form or another. Then you'll be cut off from accessing that server with all your data until you toe the line and behave yourself. Social control can be used through monetary penalizations, or through other penalizations like withdrawing you access from it. It definitely will be used for social control again, unless it's a backlash from the general public. And they do expect backlashes from people who have become used to looking into whatever site they wish to look at, or communicating whatever kind of information they want to each other. Well, here's how they did it. The evidence is all there, but knowledge, remember, is scattered. That's also why, since the 70s and so on, televisions were put up in places where people used to communicate to each other, bars and restaurants, the pubs of Europe. Everyone talked and discussed everything. The televisions were all put in for a reason. And now everyone's mesmerized and you can hear sports or loud music. You can't communicate anymore. That was government promoted because the government licensed the big chains of taverns and pubs all throughout Europe. And so what you've got really is deliberate attempts. Nothing happens for no reason. Why? The customers weren't demanded. They were bored in bars as they discussed topics. People would just move around the pub talking and listening to the conversations, and they'd join in the one that you liked. Why was it so important to destroy communication? It's because it's a main propaganda tool that stops communication between people, even in a room. If you notice too, they don't even discuss the topics, once the news is read to them, to each other. They've both been downloaded with the opinions. You don't have to ask what their opinion is. It's going to be the same one as you've been downloaded with, left by the expert. So we've got to get back to communications and communicating with each other and finding the evidence. Knowledge is scattered. Knowledge is power, so it's scattered all over the place in thousands of books. But when you can start these reading classes up and get other reading classes communicating with you, even through the internet, you can start putting the data, the factual data together, and so that you can present it to the public and bring in more and more members. Only knowledge and the will to use this knowledge is going to thwart the plans that have openly been made for us and declared from the elites at the top. The intent of governments is this is how abusers work too. Abusers work with the same technique because they want power over a victim. At one time, families helped each other out. You didn't need welfare. If someone lost their job, everyone chipped in. You didn't condemn the family member for being unemployed or ill or whatever, or losing their job. Families helped each other. Now, the family, remember, is still really the smallest nucleus of a tribe. And then government came in with unemployment insurance, which they took off you, but nothing was for free. And gradually over time, when people became unemployed or even sick for a while and couldn't work, I heard people even say to their own relatives, well, go to welfare, that's what they're for. There are social agencies to deal with this. Until today, we're in a sad state where even close relatives won't help each other out. They expect the government, the abuser, the government is the abuser. They expect the government to take care of all financial problems for the unfortunate victims. And they stop helping each other out. We've got to start reclaiming the rights to, and you can do it personally with people you know, to help other people out and start countering the government's mandate. Because the government's mandate is for control over the victims, not to help the victims. Those who fall under that particular level into the welfare state have their lives run by government agencies and social workers. That's what Huxley says. He says that they won't need their survival capabilities. Russell said the same thing, because the government is taking care and making all their decisions for them. In order to help you, it's really to take you over and have you obeying them and their system. That's what you're up against, a planned war strategy, making them dependent upon government services, not their family units, not their brothers and sisters, their fathers or mothers, but on the state itself. We've got to counter that and become involved again in the lives of those around us and have our own true communities. It doesn't matter if there's only 5 of you in a community, even if you live in a town or a city, that's your own little community where you all have something in common. What it really is gaining knowledge for your own and others' self-preservation and survival of the